Well, hey everybody, thanks for tuning in again this morning. Romans chapter 5, verse 2 is the focus verse, but you kind of got to do verse 1 with them just to kind of get an understanding of what they're exactly talking about. Finding some joy, man. There is joy in understanding that God has the future under his control. You can rejoice in understanding that God has your own personal future, but the future of the entire world under his control and under his sovereign domain. So Romans chapter 5 verse 2 says, through whom, he's talking about Christ, through Christ, through whom also we have access by faith into this grace wherein we stand, and we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. So he's talking about how we enter into the grace. First of all, verse 1, he says, having been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. This is what we were talking about yesterday. And when you experience that forgiveness of God, you have peace with God, and you have a peace that passes all understanding because you have experienced forgiveness. And he says, now also by Christ, we have access into this grace. We have access into the grace of God that we are standing in and that we are living in. That we are living in and living under God's grace. He says, and so we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. We rejoice and we find joy in the hope of the glory of God, in the future, in what God is doing, in the glory of God, because we know that God is going to glorify himself in our lives and in the world. We know that God is going to bring glory to his name. I've been mentioning Romans 8:28 a little bit, and again, this is the whole idea behind it. I know that God is going to glorify himself in me. I know that whatever happens in my life, because I belong to God, because I'm living in his grace, he is going to glorify himself and he is going to glorify his name in me, and that he is making me into who he wants me to be. Romans 8:28 and 29. All things work together for good to those who love God, who are the called according to his purpose. For those he foreknew, those who were going to be his children, he predestined, he determined that they would be conformed to the image of his Son. If you belong to Christ, you will be transformed into the image of Christ. You can't stop it. You can't help it. You can't make it go away. It is God's sovereign will, and we can rejoice in the hope of the glory of God, knowing that whatever happens in our life, God is going to use it to make us into who he wants us to be. It's easy for me, I'm going to be real honest with you, it's easy for me to look around at our world, and I'm not just talking about our country, our world, the entire world. I can be very pessimistic, and I can be angry, and I can even be despondent about what I perceive as the state of affairs in our world. But you know what? I can rejoice in the hope of the glory of God, because I know that God has the future of this world in his sovereign hands. And I know that God is bringing everything towards an end that he wants it to be to. And it is an end where he will glorify himself and where he will glorify his name. Be justified by faith, have peace with God by being justified by faith, and then stand in that grace and rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. Get out there in faith today. Love you guys. Bye.